on this wonderful discussion for today, the Productivity Z360 Expert Talk. We've been running this program from August 2023, when the Minister of Labor and Social Security, Honorable Brenda Mikatambatamba, launched it. The idea of this program is to bring on the platform different experts in different fields that speak to productivity. And every other month, we have been joined by great speakers, people with a lot of experience in the area of their expertise. And we continue to bring you this program from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, the National Productivity Development Department, where we are promoting productivity for two good reasons: for purposes of enhancing economic growth, as well as improving the standard of living of the people. And so when we talk about the people, we are all inclusive. We are looking at people across all generations. Our promotion of productivity is indeed very inclusive. The last few weeks, we had Ramchana Musiwa, who was talking about many aspects of leadership and how we can align ourselves towards productivity improvement. Today is another special day where we are featuring our very, very special guest, a senior citizen in this country, one who has served the country for many years. When I met him, he told me that he was 84 years old. And then looking at his activity, his energy, I was like, wow, I think when I get here, I want to be like him. We are very honored today to host Mr. Dante Saunders to be our discussion on the topic of improving productivity for other people in Zambia. Other people are citizens as well. They served us in many areas. So how can we keep them economically active? How can we keep them productive? That's our discussion for the day. In case you don't know, age is a natural phenomenon. Whoever you are, however you live, you will one day get there. And I remember 2 weeks ago, Dr. Kabelenga told us that if you are not interested in aging issues now, aging issues are actually interested in you, because very soon they will catch up with you. So today is a very, very special day. Mr. Dante Saunders will be accompanied by Mr. James Nguo Banda, who is Executive Director for Support to Other People Zambia. So it's a kind of balancing. From our senior citizens' perspective, how do we view issues of productivity? And from the younger generation, how do we view productivity of other people? So just a little bit of background. Mr. Dante Saunders has been a politician for over 40 years, but much more an activist. He never served in any government, but has been very keen in terms of voting and ensuring that he advocates for good governance. He is also sitting on the ZNBC board, which shows that he is still economically active and ready to serve the country in a different capacity. I will also be joined by Mr. Banda, as I said earlier on, who is Executive Director for Support to Other People Zambia. I will introduce him when he comes on the stage. So to start the show, allow me to invite Mr. Dante Saunders to just, first of all, say hello to all of you and say one or two things, and then I will allow him, I will facilitate the discussion for today. Mr. Saunders, good morning and welcome to this show today.
Good morning to you, Madam Moderator. May I say a very good morning to all your viewers that you have and or listeners. I want to say it's a great honor and a pleasure to be your guest, one of your guests this morning. And I'm very highly impressed with your organization and indeed with your ministry. And indeed, I was also very happy to hear that there is somebody who's trying to fight on behalf of the elderly people. And I want to assure the chairman there as well, including yourself, that I'll be with you all the way, in trying to bridge this gap that we may be looking at that's affecting the people of Zambia at the moment. I thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor and a pleasure, madam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In 2020, the government of Zambia, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, launched the National Productivity Policy, and whose vision is a productive and a competitive nation by 2030. In the policy, there was an aspect of improving productivity of all the people, as Zambia's productivity was deemed or was said to actually be very, very, very low. One of the issues that was highlighted in the National Productivity Policy was to keep older persons economically active or productive. And since then, the Department of National Productivity has been keen in trying to find mechanisms of how we can keep people economically active. In 2023, we held a stakeholder meeting where we invited our stakeholders to brainstorm on how we can keep people who exit the labor market economically productive. And the outcome of that meeting was that we developed a strategy of how we were going to, first of all, identify other workers or other people who are no longer on the labor market, but have a good number of skills that can be used to enhance economic growth. And arising from that, we also decided to say that we needed to do some studies, further studies, in understanding who these other people are, where they are, what kind of skills, and much more. Understand the gaps in terms of policies and legislations that hinder people from being economically active. 2 weeks ago, we actually had a dissemination meeting where the consultant, Dr. Kabelenga, presented preliminary results of the findings in terms of the gaps and the gaps on policies and legislations that hinder people economically active. Now, the gaps, I think, are an eye-opener. We are looking at the recommendation, and we are yet to sit down, consolidate, and come up with a strategy on how we are going to address the gaps, as well as ensure that other people are economically active. So in the background, that is what we have done. And so since today we are joined by Mr. Saunders, I just want, first of all, as a start of this discussion, to give us an experience, or his experience, of what it was to age in those days before us. How did government manage, to keep people productive? Because if they didn't, we wouldn't have actually known about him today. Were there some of the things that were being done then that are not being done now? Or what is it that we need to do now to strengthen, mechanisms to keep people economically active, to recognize their skills, and to utilize them in various aspects of our deliberations in government and also outside government. Mr. Saunders, what has been your experience?
That's a tall question, madam, but I'd like to answer it this way, that, when I was a teenager, when I was growing up and started working as a learner, I worked under very strong people such as the whites those days, which was the colonialists. And to work under those people was a blessing in many ways, in that it taught us, or taught me, I should say, some form of strong discipline, hard work. Hard work. Yes, we were paid well. We were paid well. That's number one. We were well rewarded for working hard. Number two. And as life progressed, I became qualified enough to work in the company that I worked for. I became qualified in that particular job, and I was well rewarded. We had a lot of opportunities offered to us at that particular point in time. And perhaps if I have to say that one of the biggest reasons that I see disconnect between my generation and that of the younger generation today is simply because maybe the younger generation constitutionally, I'm using that word constitutionally because I'll come back to it again. I know, seem to have it very easy. They can come up with all kinds of excuses why they cannot do A, B, C, D, and they feel, some of them feel that they can make more money being on their own, and so on and so on, without the discipline that people, the elderly people had. And it's because of that disconnect that I also feel like the many people that have put this program together, that there are many professionals here in Zambia today at my age, many, many, many. And it reminds me of the fact that there are institutions such as retired people being hired to do specific programs and jobs within Africa. And these institutions, you find a lot of them in Europe, a lot of them in America, and it's very, very easy to trace them and to find out, just say for argument's sake, you want to put up some buildings, for instance, you can get some professionals with regards to that particular issue. I know one thing for sure, that if you want discipline in Zambia, if you want to look at people who have served this country well, there are many people still available today. As I'm speaking to you, there are many people who will lean over backwards to ensure that our economy is driven in the right direction to increase your productivities. There are lots of people who will do it for you freely. We have this kind of expertise here. And one has to just look at President Kaunda's government. If you can recall, I mean, you know that probably a good percentage of the ministers were never educated. Never educated at all. Some could hardly just write, put a thumbprint or fingerprint, or couldn't even write or sign a signature, nothing. But they had very, very good permanent secretaries, I must say. The civil service at that time, and President Kaunda was in government, were excellent, excellent people, who today, many of them have died, and may I say, probably in abject poverty. Poverty. That simply means, to me, madam, that they were so disciplined. The corruption was not an issue in Kaunda's government. That is one thing. Corruption was never there. Had I known that fighting for democracy would be to introduce corruption, believe me, I would have never, never wanted to see democracy ever again, because the levels of corruption is crept into what I call now outright plunder of the wealth of this nation. And sadly, very sadly, it is being conducted by the younger generation, not by the elderly people, by the younger generation. That's why I say this disconnect. It's so important that we should try by all means, even if it's a subject that we don't like talking about. We don't like talking about it because we feel so, it's not in our culture to fight with each other. But the current levels now, I must admit, madam, I'm not really happy at all. And unless we come together and we all, through this group of yours, through this ministry, if we can find a formula where we can put our differences aside and begin to emulate some of the elderly people that we have around us today in Zambia, I think Zambia could be a better place. If you look at politically, yes, where, one can say that many people have died in, as I mentioned, in abject poverty. And it's so sad, really, that even our children and our grandchildren, never looked after the elderly people, which will bring me to a very important issue as well as we move on. But I think that for me, I want to say that I'm not happy at all with the disconnect that we have seen. Economically, socially, I think we have done very badly, and I think we could do better. And if we want a better nation, and we want to live in peace and in harmony and happily together, I think we need to do something about addressing our differences with the younger generation. And, we need to come back, sit around the table again. And we can only do that if institutions such as yourselves help us to get together. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very important insights you have brought out. Our listeners, please feel free to give us your comment in the chat, in the chat box on YouTube. If you have any question or if you have any contribution, you are please welcome to write in the chat box. I think Mr. Saunders has brought out very, very important issues that I have taken note. The availability of skilled older persons who are actually very willing to serve the nation, the availability of experienced civil servants who we can emulate and learn from. I totally agree with him that a majority of the civil servants I knew then worked tirelessly and selflessly, and are actually in poverty now because they never knew how to get corruption or how to get involved in corruption, and dubiously attain massive wealth. This was not an idea of the older civil servants, and that's experience that we are learning from him. He's talked so much about the disconnect between the younger generation and the older generation, and says that he hopes that we need to come up with a formula on how we can reconnect and learn from the young people. So joining us again today on the stage is Mr. James Nguo Banda, who is executive director for Support to Older People Zambia, a very youthful organization that is supporting older persons. I will bring him on the stage and allow him to introduce himself, and then also give us a reflection of how disconnect we are in terms of the older and the younger generation, and his experiences in actually working with older people. Maybe we are just assuming. So let's learn from people on the ground. What is it that is on the ground? So allow me to welcome Mr. Banda on the stage. He's experiencing a little bit of a challenge in terms of a network, but I hope we will be able to get something from him. Oh, sorry, he's gone out. Good morning, Mr. Banda. Okay, so as he's joining us, back to you, Mr. Saunders. What exactly were mechanisms that maybe the UNIP government or other experiences you have that were put in place to ensure that people, as they were exiting the labor market, they were probably very certain that they will have a life after retirement? Are there some experiences that you can share with us that can tell us of how other people were taken care of during that time? One or two mechanisms you are able to share with us?
Well, number one, madam, I think time has come, ready for even for. I know that I'm pressing the government here, and I'm a very strong supporter of this particular government, simply because they are delivering to the people of this country what they promised the people of this country, and much more than that. For once in my lifetime, I'm really happy with this government, or with the government of the day. So I believe really that there would be the right government to be able to put in place certain motions and certain issues that I think can go a long way into helping the people of this country. For instance, number one, when we look at the federal days, times when I was a boy, teenager, and so on and so on, we found that the mines, for instance, all the mines in our country put together, Anglo-American and blah, 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 they took care of the elderly people. When they retired them, they found them sort of a place to live in, where it's like a complex, where they had doctors, nurses visiting them daily, and so on and so on. It was like a hostel, and they were there. They were not there for everyone, but the mines took care of that. And the bigger companies within Zambia at that time also joined forces with them and made sure that the elderly people that were retired from work, those that served, well, were well kept after when they went into retirement. That was one. Number two, they were fully paid with their retirement packages and so on and so on. So if you didn't want to go to the old age home, you could perhaps buy your own place and live the way you wanted to live. But however, the opportunities were always there, and I believe really that this government, if we can start somewhere, somehow, maybe with the mines and with government, we could build some kind of chalets or something of the sort to keep these people. Because after all, we are building a lot of schools in Zambia. And when we think about these kind of hostels, we're talking one off here, one off there, and so on and so on and so on. And it can be done. I know that a lot of big companies will join government in contributing for the welfare of the elderly people. Of course, we must have it in certain stages. You can't put, for instance, retired people retire right next door to where HH is, or to where President Lungu is, and Rupia Banda, and KK, and so on and so on. We must have it in levels. So the presidents will be there. Of course, top civil servants must have their own place, and so on and so on. Because there are many huge expenses that, the elderly people sadly have got to also continue to meet with the younger generation. In order to survive today, madam, it is much more harder today than it was in my time. I can tell you that. We only had difficult problems in perhaps Dante Saunders couldn't go to any five-star hotel or drink the whiskey I wanted to drink or the brandy I wanted to drink. Yes, we had those kind of problems, but we did have hard times, but it was not as hard as we are facing today. Today, it is becoming a bit of a problem to survive for the elderly people, and my heart bleeds out to many of those people that I have personally seen die in abject poverty. Some of our ministers, some of our permanent secretaries from the olden days, madam, you couldn't like the place where they were living. I tell you, it's so heartbreaking. So it goes to say, that yes, I think if the colonialists could look after the elderly whites, why can't we as black people who are independent, why can't we do the same and look after our own people? If the mines the mines, the very mines that we own this today here in Zambia, if they could take care of the whites, why can't we take care of our black people in the same positions? So it can be done, madam. But it's an issue that we need somebody to galvanize all these issues and all our differences and put them aside and let us fight with one voice instead of 4 or 5 different voices. We need to be united in this particular issue, but definitely we have got to find a solution. We can't continue to just talk and talk and talk. And the best institution to put us together is this particular one, Madam Moderator, where you are. So I'll plead with you and your ministry, and politically I will do whatever it takes in order to see that our elderly people at least let us die in dignity and not the way some people are going today. Sadly, it's not an issue that we like to talk about, but I think that from today onwards, we must be men and bold enough to bring these particular issues to the table. We can't continue to push our heads under the sand anymore, because what is affecting the elderly people today is definitely going to affect the younger generation as well, even worse when they come to be my age.
Very, 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 very important information you've given us on how the mines, the Anglo people took care of it. But I think it is practical. We can start from somewhere else. So, Mr. Banda, welcome to the program. Please introduce yourself and the discussion around productivity of older workers. And I know your organization has been very instrumental in trying to advocate for older people. You've heard what happened in the colonial days, how older people were taken care of. What's the situation of older people from your experience as you work with this category of people?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Once again, good morning, Mr. Saunders.
Morning.
Thank you. My apologies, my connection hasn't been very good today, but I'm glad to be part of the discussion. Yeah, I think the situation of older persons in Zambia today, the elderly, is that first, let's look at the population. Population of Zambia is somewhere slightly above, 20 million now, maybe getting towards 21 million. 42% of that, not 42%, but 4.2% of that, about 4.2% of that are older persons. And to put that into context, we are here talking about people that are aged 6 years and above. And I think even our own constitution speaks to that. The situation is that it's a sorry sight. If you're talking about poverty levels, among older persons, they are the hardest hit. You're talking about poverty levels of 80% and above. And that has been a situation from as far back as 2006, according to the Zambia Statistics Agency, then Central Statistics Office. In addition to that, we find that their living conditions, whether it be the houses they live in most cases, are a sorry sight, as Mr. Saunders has pointed out. But the beauty, though, is that despite all these challenges, and of course, like Mr. Saunders has mentioned, we're also looking at challenges that other people are facing, including health challenges, economic challenges, social challenges. And some of them could be even considered spiritual challenges, where being old or growing old is now seen as a sign of witchcraft, which is a very sad thing to do or even hear about. However, we do have cases of older persons that are still a shining light in this country in terms of them remaining productive. However, the issue of helping or ensuring that every Zambian, as they age, remains productive cannot be left to government alone. And that's where we, among many other organizations that are looking at the rights and well-being of other persons, support to other people, Zambia, Stop Zambia for short, the organization I work for, we advocate for policy interventions. And in doing so, we work together with government. As Madam Moderator, you pointed out earlier, we've been part of that process, working together with government to come up with that national consultative meeting we had in 2021, somewhere around October. And then down the line of our discussions, including with international organizations that have come to support us, and working together with the ministry. Now, in addition to the policy that the ministry has in place, which is a government policy, we should emphasize that, we now have going towards coming up with a national strategy. Now, I know that the strategy in itself does sound like something focused only on those people that are from that have been in formal employment. But beyond that, we're also looking at the traditional skills among our elderly, people that do basketry, people that do, they do carvings, people that have done many other different skills out there in the communities who can still continue to contribute. And in that area, to just give an example, as an organization, we've got an income and economic strengthening project focusing on older persons that we are implementing. And among them are skills. We are looking at us being able to help other persons gain new skills that will continue to make them relevant, even in this digital age, for example. And also that even in passing on of the traditional skills, whether they be carpentry, electrical, many other different skills, running businesses, for example, other persons would be of help to the younger generation. And as an organization, we are one that prides ourselves on ensuring that our approach is one of, whole family, whole community approach. Meaning that whereas we're talking about NGOs like ourselves, government, and other, the labor movement coming together, we're also looking at communities being involved, families being involved in ensuring that other people's welfare is taken care of, and particularly in ensuring that they remain productive in their own way, they continue to contribute to their own well-being. But we also know that other people are looking after many young people at the moment. I think one survey some 5 years or so ago did indicate that the then 640,000 older people, we are looking after more than 1.2 million orphans and vulnerable children. So working to ensure that older persons remain economically active, capable of providing for themselves, unless those who cannot because of circumstances beyond their control, should be an imperative for government, for us in the NGO sector or civil society, and all other stakeholders such as the faith-based organizations and many community-based organizations, as well as our own traditional leadership. All of us working together can actually help to ensure that older persons age with dignity and honor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Banda. That's very, very, very good information that you have channeled to our viewers this morning. The issue of everybody working together, I think, is very important. I hardly hear, for example, the labor movement talk about older workers. And I think for me, this is just an eye opener on how, in our advocacy strategies at various levels, we could be very inclusive in our advocacy of policies that promote productivity or that promote inclusive growth. You've also mentioned a few experiences of what you are doing in terms of strengthening the capacity of older people in terms of their economic situation. I also hear you together with Mr. Saunders when you talk about the situation of older people in Zambia currently as being very poor. And I think this is what Mr. Saunders was just talking about. How are we preparing this generation so that we do not get into a situation where we still have older people of tomorrow being poor? The way we are seeing 80%, over 80% is actually too high, even for a population that is about 4% of the total population. So how are we preparing this older generation? Is there anything we are doing or we need to do to ensure that this current generation is ready and is well skilled, is well connected and not disconnected, to ensure that we reduce this old age poverty for the future?
Thank you very much. Yes, there is something we are doing. And I think first we should commend government that even as way back as 20 or maybe even 30 years ago, government did introduce a program in form of pre and post-retirement programs. The pre-retirement programs are those preparing workers right now who are still in the labor force or in the labor market to actually prepare for life after retirement, so they can seamlessly transition to being involved in their own economic activities for their own welfare after they've retired. But there are also programs engaging those that have retired. And some people may remember Future Search, for example. And this is a program that is sitting within the department. I mean, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. I believe this could be the Department of Social Security. That being said, I think we have not been doing enough in that area. And this is where we, as a civil society, would want to come in, work together with government and ensure that these pre and post-retirement programs are actually revived, strengthened, and expanded so that we're able to reach as many people as possible. And one way to ensure that what Mr. Saunders has been talking about, that this current generation does not end up in a worse off situation than our older people are right now, is to ensure that the issue of preparing for retirement starts at the time when someone is actually in school. They learn about aging, that it's a reality, and we've got to prepare for that point in life when we no longer have maybe the physical capacity and the opportunity to get the resources that we may when we are still young. We prepare for that. And when people are starting their jobs, their very first job, that is the time to begin to save for their life after retirement, to begin to invest. So those are the kind of programs that we are looking at now. And in doing so, like I mentioned earlier, we're using what we're calling the intergenerational approach. So the intergenerational approach implies that we have the old and the young working together, even the middle age, because we have a lot to learn from each other, a lot to teach each other, and a lot with which to support one another. And these are the programs we're dealing. And I'll give an example of the organization I work for myself, Stop Zambia, Support to Older People Zambia, that we are an organization of the young for the old. So the majority of the staff we have actually very young people, younger than 30, most of them. Maybe just one who is above 30. and we work very well at policy level, policy engagement level, national level, and various levels, provincial, district, and so on and so forth, but also even at community levels through our community structures, which comprise both older people and the young, as well as the middle-aged ones. And there's a lot of wealth of experience, of knowledge and skills that can be and is being shared along those lines. And I think these are some of the ways in which we can ensure that, one, the current younger generation does not find themselves in a worse off position when they have grown old, but also ensuring that even the current elderly generation are able to benefit, and with the little that they can do, be able to provide for themselves so as they live with dignity and honor.
I have brought Mr. Dante Saunders again on stage. And you mentioned, Executive Director, you mentioned a very important point about digitalization. We are living in this digital era, almost ending the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm wondering whether our older generation are moving along with us. Mr. Saunders, what do you think in terms of digitalization? Are our older people up to date with technology?
You know, madam, I talk for myself because maybe I don't want to talk on behalf of your grandfather and grandmother. I just learned how to put talk time in my phone 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, but I've had a cell phone all along. It just goes to show you that I'm really bad on this particular issue. I believed in our time that we had to work with our hands and our heads. But I've done well without a computer. My secretary has all these things, of course, but I know how to count 1 to 10. If you put 10 stones down, I'll know how to count them. Subtract 2, 3, whatever I do it. But I'm always spot on. But I don't believe that one needs to be computerized in order to do your work or to do your share in this country. I think that
Hello, moderator, are you on?
Sorry about that. We just got into a power cut in the ministry, and we're just trying to get reconnected. Mr. Saunders was on the floor on the issue of digitalization. Mr. Banda, what are we doing to ensure that we bring older people digitally active? You heard him. He just learned how to talk time. What about browsing? What about these simple technical skills? What is it that from the NGO side you can do to ensure that we skill people, because we will not run away from this digital technology. If we are to use them, they said they are willing, they're very willing, to work, very willing to partner with us in terms of mentorships of the younger generation. But at some point, for them to reach out to every destination will be a challenge. And one way which I feel can be done, can also be done using technology. But if they do not know how to do it, or if they don't have this capacity to do it, how then will we be able to help? So from your side, what is it that we're doing to help people and keep them digitally connected?
Thank you very much. And I think although he was, Mr. Saunders was saying he has trouble with the, technology. I think there's one positive I picked from his sharing with us, that he learned, and that's 2 weeks ago. At 84 years old, he was still able to learn something. So that's a beginning point. The capacity to learn in a human being remains with them until they go to the other side. So every older person is capable of learning if given the opportunity, if given the right tools, and given the right support. And so that then is the beginning of my response in terms of what we can and working on doing as an NGO together with other NGOs, that we work on reskilling older persons and also retooling, so to speak. They have access to these tools. So having access to these technological gadgets, smartphones, the iPads, whatever we may call them, is a beginning. And then we must come up with a very simplified curriculum to teach them how to navigate these gadgets, how to browse. But with that must come the security, because the internet is not a very safe place. It's good, it's very beneficial, but it has its own challenges. It really can pose a lot of security and safety risks to many people. And so those are some of the things that we're building into this. And in doing so, we have been, for the past couple of years, trying to see if we can get some of our internet service providers, the mobile service providers, to come on board and support us with this. I think our challenge has been, how can we find someone to provide some fund as a guarantee for this kind of education, in terms of passing on digital skills for older persons. Beyond that, we are also looking at having younger people working together with older people to help older people learn the skills. Much as there's also a lot that the younger people can learn from the elderly, there's a lot that the elderly can also learn from younger people. And one such area is teaching older persons digital skills, internet skills, so they're able to participate more effectively than they're able to right now. Once they have those skills and once they have that knowledge of the digital and internet space. And we know of examples of this working in other countries. I can mention the United States. It was a study, but it actually did reveal that older persons learned a lot from the young in terms of internet skills, digital skills, but also the young learned a lot from the elderly in many other different ways. So for us, that is the route we are taking, and we're hoping that we can soon find among our mobile service providers, internet service providers, one who can come forth, partner with government through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, or indeed the Ministry of Technology and Science, and ourselves as an NGO and many other NGOs, so that we have this level of education happening at community level, where we can help older people acquire internet skills or digital skills broadly. And the beauty is that, as already stated, we know that older persons still are able to learn. They're able to. And the example Mr. Saunders has just given us, him learning how to load talk time just a couple of weeks ago, at 84 years of age, that does give hope. It's one reason why we as Stop Zambia continue to invest in this kind of education and among other interventions for older persons. I seem to be alone. I wonder whether Madam Moderator and Mr. Saunders are on, but perhaps I could continue also to talk about another thing while we're waiting for them to rejoin. You see, in this world and in our communities, we need one another, regardless of the age, regardless of the social, economic circumstances, regardless of ability or disability. And so one thing we ought to remember is to value one another. And the best way to avoid someone being a burden on you economically and socially is to help them stand on their own. And it's for this reason that we advocate, together with government, and of course, as an organization, among many others, that can we ensure that we help to keep the elderly economically active. They may not need to hold on to that job that the youth are anchoring for, but beyond that job, there's something they can do. And even within there, in the labor market, the elderly can still take on coaching and mentorship roles. That's another area. And if they're going to take on coaching and mentorship, the elderly are going to take on coaching and mentorship roles for the younger generation and even to their own peers. Definitely, they need to be supported in terms of them acquiring the skills we're talking about. Most of the coaching, the mentoring today happens virtually, online. You don't have to be in the same space. So, in doing so, we need to ensure that the labor market, by our laws and policies, the labor market should remain as accommodative as possible on the grounds of age. We do not have to lose, the young do not have to anchor for the jobs, the same jobs as older people. I was actually talking about the elderly transitioning to the formal jobs that they are having by the time they retire, to mentorship and coaching roles, which they can continue to benefit the fellow elderly, but also the younger generation. And I think that is an area that is worth investing in by government and many other stakeholders. And in this case, we also want to appeal to our cooperating partners to support us in this journey. So digital skills for the elderly or internet skills for the elderly is very important. And welcome back, Mr. Saunders. I was happy to hear that only 2 weeks ago, you managed to learn how to load talk time. So I was actually saying while you were offline, I was actually saying that is a positive sign because it shows that your ability to learn something new is still there. And that then is a reason for us to invest, to continue investing in that area so that we can have you not left behind, but be together with us. I mean, that's government's policy. Leave no one behind. The UN is also leave no one behind. So we don't want to leave you, the elderly, behind. We want to include you. And one of the ways we think we can include you is ensuring that we're able to help you learn as much as possible the digital skills as well as the the internet skills, and make sure that these spaces, the digital space, is actually safe for the elderly, because there are a lot of crooks, online, that could take advantage of an elderly person because of they are not having very strong internet skills, and we would like to that. So the package of skills training, digital skills or internet skills training that we're working on is one that would ensure that the safety and security is also factored in, but also that the means of instruction for the elderly are going to be friendly to their age, their level or capacity of assimilating new information and being able to acquire new skills and use them to their benefit, and of course the benefit of many others, which do include many children and young people. As I earlier on stated, this is a space that actually I mean, a lot of others Zambians, are looking after young people, are looking after children, who in many cases are their grandchildren. Sometimes they're not even related to them. So they need that support. And that intergenerational approach then would work well in terms of ensuring that the elderly do acquire these skills and remain economically viable for their own and, of course, their families and communities' benefit. Hello, viewers. It does look like my colleagues have dropped off again. I just wanted to say and just re-emphasize that as an NGO, we are working on a program for acquisition of skills or imparting skills to other persons that would make it easier for them to navigate the digital space, the internet, but also that would help them remain economically active and therefore continue to age in dignity and honor. So that is a bit of what we're doing. Some of it is already going on in one community here in Osaka province, the nearby district of Rufunsa. We've got one community where we have such a project going on, skills oriented. We also have one in central province in an area called Mkonchi where we have older people and the young working together. So for those who might wish to get in touch with us, support to Older People Zambia, email stop Zambia, STOP Zambia, all in small letters, then 2016 at gmail.com. In case you have some ideas in terms of how we can work together. For phone 0955 566 360. 0955 566 360. The same number is also on WhatsApp. Please reach us, feel free, let us discuss and work together in enhancing the productivity of older people in Zambia. I see that the other colleagues are probably coming back on again. Welcome back. I've been alone for some time.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know we just had a power cut in the building, and I think it has disturbed our internet connection. But I'm very happy because I was following on the other side where you've ably talked about digitalization. Yeah, and I think one of the issues that we need to address are issues such as this, the digital infrastructure, the internet we are talking about. Already this has caught up with us. So how do we make this internet accessible? The last aspect I wanted to comment on has to do with older people. Are we having older people access environment so that they can remain economically active? From the civil society point of view, are there situations where older people are able to access CPF, access the I remember from the comment that with financial
My apologies. It looks like I too am falling off. My connection is very weak. Are you able to get me? Okay, if I got her right, she was asking what we're doing. In terms of one of the challenges older people face in terms of them remaining economically active, even when it comes to self-employment or their own little investments, is a lack of access to credit. Just because somebody has reached 60, especially 65, no financial institution, the banks, for example, check you out. And that needs to change. So what we're doing ourselves is, with some willing and supportive cooperating partners, Support Older People Zambia, together with other NGOs in this sector supporting older people, have come up with a project we're calling Older Persons Economic Strengthening Project. And there we do skills training, but we also provide little startup capital to older persons, or in their stead, the youth that they are looking after or who live with them, so that they can start a business or indeed boost their current income generating activity of whatever size. And we support them also with training in just simple business planning and financial skills. And then after the training, we provide a little credit, a little loan, about 5,000 or more from where we started. But of course, a small number, because we don't have many cooperating partners supporting us yet. So that we are doing, and that's what we continue to encourage. But we are also speaking to financial institutions to be more considerate, rather than just using age blanketly. Let them assess every older person that applies for credit on their own accord, on their own standing, because then they'll be able to see what this person is capable to offer and what they're not capable of offering. And a number of them could still access credit and use it very well to actually be able to pay back and indeed boost their income generating activities, their enterprise of whatever size it may be. So the discrimination that exists on the basis of age now, in terms of accessing loans of whatever size for business, is one that we need to look at and ensure that it is removed. Instead, people be considered in their own accord, because that then will be making the financial market more accessible to older persons, many of whom are still very much economically active and viable, many of whom are still making a huge economic contribution. And so to deny them access to credit purely on the basis of age is inhuman, and denies a lot of people the benefit that can come from those older persons engaging in income generation, particularly if they are also looking after children and young people who must depend on these elderly in order for them to continue with their education, access other services such as health services, nutrition and education, skills. All these, they still need the support of this elderly person whom we are denying access to that funding which can help boost their earnings, and therefore also denying these children and young people the opportunity to acquire that skill, to acquire that education that would actually help them stand on their own and make this country less dependent, and having more people economically active, more youth, more young people, more youth remaining or being economically active as early as possible, and many elderly people remaining economically active as far as is humanly possible. So the financial, the legal architecture around lending by financial institutions need to change. It must change and become more inclusive, and not remain discriminatory to people, who are 65 or 60 and above, all because of their age. Even though we know they are capable of paying back, they probably are even running enterprises that can pay back on their own, even if something happened to this elderly person. That is our message to government. That's our message to the pensions and insurance authority, that can we look at these things, and the financial lending institutions, can we look at this particular provision that denies people access to credit purely because they're in their old age, even when they can still manage to use that money very wisely, productively, profitably, be able to pay back, and then they continue their enterprises and support many other people, create more jobs, and ensure that people remain in employment, including the younger people in most cases. I think that is one area that does require serious intervention by this government and by our nation. And the private sector in this case have a big role to play. The fears we have regarding older people not being able to pay back is really not justified. We've seen more younger people dying than older people. So if the fear is that older people are a risk to lend to because they can die anytime, that's unfounded unless we have decided the day in which they must die. That's the appeal. And I think we need to look at that very seriously because it's a matter of human right. And everyone deserves that access to credit if they can manage. We're not saying giving to anybody anyhow, but we are saying for when assessed by a financial institution, can we look at the elderly in terms of their capacity to pay? If you want to go as far as doctors certifying that they're still in good health, rather than just using the age and say they can't pay back, that really is not a fair thing to do. And that's the reason why many of them are, finding themselves in those situations where, as Mr. Saunders was saying, they die in poverty when something can be done to avert that. That's our appeal, both to government, the financial institutions, as well as of agencies such as the pensions and insurance agency. Can we consider those aspects and ensure that older persons are covered based on their capacity rather than the age? As per my reckoning, I think the program is supposed to be ending at about now. My last words is, please, fellow Zambians, young and old, let's work together, support one another. Let's avoid the badge of which and the badge of and the practice of pushing people out of the labor market purely based on age. Yes, they can leave those jobs for you, but there are other jobs that can be created, other job opportunities that can be created for the elderly, for all of us as we get older. And like I pointed out earlier, mentorship and coaching, these older people can do, and they don't have to get your job. They don't have to get your job as a young person. They don't have to. They don't need to. Actually, you are going to need them as they remain your coaches, as they remain your mentors in the various fields that you're operating in. Whether it's running a small business, there's some other people that have been running these businesses for many years. So they know what risks are worth taking and which ones are not worth taking. They'll be of help to all of us. Can we remain united as a country? Government, the citizens, civil society, the faith, based organizations, religious organizations, if you wish, community, traditional leadership, civic leadership. We all need one another. And we are riding at this time, in terms of a development agenda, on the motto, or rather the clarion call, leave no one behind. So let's not leave the elderly behind in this journey. There should be enough space. And let not our fears push out other people just because we don't want to try, we don't want to be innovative. That will not help us. We're better off having everybody standing on their own, including and especially the elderly, because then we have less of a burden. Those that can, let's support them in the best way possible. Give them the skills, give them the knowledge, provide them the necessary opportunities and the support, and of course, give them access to credit where they need it, where and when they need it. Thank you very much. I wish everybody a blessed day. And thank you very much once again to the Minister of Labor and Social Security National Productivity Development Department for this opportunity to discuss matters of productivity, and in this particular edition, enhancing the productivity of older workers in Zambia. Thank you. Have a blessed day, and bye.
area we experience the challenges. It has been a very good discussion. Has just been I would like to apologize, but bring Saunders to just closing remarks on this very important subject. I'll give you my.
To end your show, just very interesting and very nice that it is being done. But I to speed up this particular process, and on behalf of many elderly people within Zambia, I was I think the institution and with that of Mr. Dante, I want to say that we, the elderly people, are in safe hands. And all we've got to do now is for us to all hold hands together and make sure that this institution is well supported, very well supported. And we must use this particular institution together to reach out to all ages within Zambia to promote the idea that we cannot leave anyone behind in our quest to work hard for our country, see us grow economically, politically, and indeed socially. We need each other as bad as possible so develop on all areas. For me, I thank you very much, Madam, for your program. And let me assure you that I will be there for you to offer any assistance you may require from time to time. And from me, you are most welcome. Again, just to end off digitally, where we are communication and blah, blah, blah. That goes to show you that technology is not only the best solution, but what I think we should try to do is visit our homes. From there, we can always work, whether it is through technologies, you trust the signals, and so on and so on. So thank you very much for inviting me to your program, and may God bless you and your institution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring. And we have Mr. Saunders by our to try and see how we can order workers economically active. It has been a wonderful discussion. I hope I've picked out one or two issues from here. I've learned quite a lot, and I think I've added to my knowledge on how the companies or individual companies can order workers as they exit their companies. It happened before, and I think it can happen now. So there's a lot we can learn from our senior citizen, and I'm very he came through and joined us. So until next month on the Tuesday, please be sure to join us. Thank you very much. God bless you.